What's up guys, and welcome back to another EVE Online video. Today I want to talk about wormhole space and the impact of Equinox and a couple of the changes within Equinox on wormhole space, and kind of what I'm seeing as a bit of a general trend at the moment that I've got some concerns with. Now I'm going to open this by saying overall I think Equinox looks great. Huge amount of work got into it from CCP. Clearly, the changes going on in nullsec are super exciting. I don't have much nullsec play or experience, but what's going on down there looks great, and I'm looking forward to getting involved with some of it. I'm not going to talk about all that now because there are plenty of other videos on it. But other things like the Skinner tool, for me personally, regardless of what you think about obviously the Plex microtransactions and all that kind of stuff, I think the tool itself is fantastic. I've been designing a couple of skins that I may or may not share with you at some point. Not sequenced them yet, but got a couple of designs in place. I think that's great. Obviously, one of the funny kind of consequences of the introduction of Skinner and the Plex microtransactions is I think we expect the price of Plex in game to spike, and as such, CCP have just are just offering a huge Plex sale at the moment on at the store, so you can. I think you can get up to 30% off. So if you fancy taking advantage of that for this week, I think it's running for 1 week from the date of release of this video. You can head over to the Marquee Dragon store using my link in the video and get 3% off your already 30% discounted Plex, and I get a little kickback. So that's kind of a funny consequence, I guess, of the introduction of Skinner and everything, is the huge Plex spike, and that now they're probably having to counter it. The other thing I want to sort of then dive into, though, is how all of this impacts JSpace. Specifically, a couple of the changes in Equinox that CCP have kind of snuck in that people may not have noticed yet necessarily. It won't have got much of a spotlight on how it impacts JSpace. So all of this stuff, great, no problem. We understand, of course, that now nullsec are going to have full control over their resource distribution. If they do things correctly, they'll be able to get every type of mineral, which means the price of titanium and things in HiSec is very likely to drop off, and Noxium will probably drop off a bit, and the big one is for JSpace is Isogen is likely to fall off a cliff as well, because you've not been able to get that in nullsec since scarcity began, and that's kind of the one thing that still makes mining in JSpace properly worthwhile. We knew this was coming, of course, so that's not a huge surprise, and not the end of the world if we're starting to obviously see the end properly of scarcity and the reintroduction and redistribution of materials. That's a natural part of it, so not too concerned about that, but it is likely to remove a viable industry out of JSpace again, which is mining of Isogen. That being said, from the early signs that I'm seeing coming out of nullsec at the moment, there might not be as much abundance of materials as we originally thought because of the power limitations. So we'll see how that balances out. I want to reserve judgment fully, but initial thinking is mining in JSpace is going to fall off as a consequence of this, which is okay, we can accept. But I just want to make sure that that's included in these changes that are impacting JSpace. The other thing as we go through, we will be able to use a Metanox moon drill. Lowsec, nullsec, and JSpace will all be able to anchor a moon drill. And that's pretty cool. I'm excited about being able to use that. Unsurprisingly, it requires a core, which costs 300 million. So all in, you're at about 650 million-ish to build one of these and then anchor it. So, not expensive, but also not super cheap, and you need to be confident you're going to get return on investment on that. And in JSpace, there's only R4 moons, so the cheapest moon materials you can get, equivalent to HiSec. So we're definitely going to anchor one of these and really test it. But if they're talking about 40% efficiency, if we do a week-long moon pull, at the moment on an R4, a good R4 moon. The value's about 500 million, which means at 40% efficiency, this will pull in about 200 million a week in ore, providing the value of ore doesn't tank, moon material, sorry, doesn't tank, which again we're expecting it to. If nullsec and lowsec can start putting these all over the place, then we're expecting the price to tank. But as it stands, 200 million a week-ish, if you run these, not including the fuel cost. We obviously at this stage we have no indication of how much the magmatic gas, which needs to come from nullsec, is going to cost. And the fact that it needs to come from nullsec, like we're not expecting magmatic gas to land on the market for quite a long time in any kind of reasonable quantities. This will stay in null for a while they get all their moon drills up and running, and then they'll start shipping it to market. That being said, one of the things, of course, that we can do from JSpace, which is an additional feature that I'm quite excited about, is new nullsec content. So it's not actually wormhole content. I just want to make that point, but it's content we can do from wormhole, and we can launch out into nullsec and try and raid the skyhooks to get some magmatic gas to then bring back in and fuel our moon drills, and that's what we'll try and do. Raiding for the other materials is only worth it if we can take it to market, so we'll see how much we do that. But magmatic gas, we will go and run some raids and see what we can do to get our moon drills running. So that's relatively positive, but I don't think it's going to be super viable. Like, we're not going to have 30 of these down in one system mining all our R4 moons, because that industry is going to tank with all of these running. So I think it's going to be a while to get a return on investment, and especially if one's going to buy a BPO, they're 6 billion. So then if you want to build one, it's another 650 million. Say we can achieve 200 million a week, we're talking 6 months, over 6 months, more like 7-8 months before you can pay off the BPO and the moon drill. And that's fine, but we'll see how that goes. Again, we're reserving judgment. The haulers, of course, we'll take advantage of as well. No harm in having weaponized haulers for JSpace. These will be used all over New Eden. They've had 2 rebalances since the launch already, so we'll see where they actually end up. But at the moment, they're quite fun. And as we scroll through, I want to mention, I'm going to talk about the carrier conduit jumps in a second, but I'm going to come back to them because they're just a kind of a footnote for me. But here is it's a very minor change, but it continues to point to what I see as a bit of a problem in JSpace at the moment. So yes, some of you might not have even heard of this ship before, the Victorious Luxury Yacht. It's a very specialized ship in game that did see some use, as mentioned here, as a rolling ship in wormhole space. What do we mean by rolling ship? It's you can shove enough mass through a wormhole to close it, because they have limited mass, and so this would be used as one of the ships to do that. Yes, it was nigh uncatchable because you could fit an interdiction nullifier to it. It can fit a CovOps cloak, all that kind of stuff. Well, that being said, there was already a change a while ago that meant some of this fell off. You could no longer fit a nullifier with a cloak. So, nigh uncatchable is probably not a bit of a stretch these days. But also, Wormhole kind of policed this itself. People very rarely used luxury yachts in kind of day-to-day flying. They were generally reserved for if you're facing an eviction fleet, an eviction threat. They've established full hull control, and they've door stopped the entries and stuff, and you're at risk of losing your home system. Then people would undock the yacht to try and break the doorstop and break the hull control. That's kind of what they were kept for. And if you were caught using a yacht just rolling a hull regularly by some other wormhole groups, then you'd become a target. You'd get camped. They'd try and remove your yachts from the game and that kind of stuff. Maybe even evict you because you've been cheesing using the yacht earlier on. So it was kind of self-policed. And all this change really does now is make it much harder for a small group to face off an eviction. This was one of the mechanisms you had to break a well-organized hole control system. So if you're facing serious threat, you could break that doorstop and try and regain the initiative. That's gone. This is no longer, with the changes, it's completely not viable as a roller, as they've said. So that's gone. So just want to mention that because it all points to something I'm about to say later. And then the big change that's got me kind of annoyed, I've actually waited a couple of days before producing this video so that I could get a bit more perspective on it. Because when the patch notes and then the Equinox itself was released, I was actually really annoyed about this change. They have, where is it? It's way down the bottom somewhere. Home fronts, PvE, here we go. They have removed the drifter spawn from high-class wormholes unless you're flying a capital ship. And okay, some of you here might be going, okay, big whoop, what does that mean? So I've done videos before on farming C5 wormholes in a Marauder, and it was very good ISK. Like, okay, if that could be a problem. If you're able to earn 1 billion ISK an hour with 2 ships and they're not capitals, maybe that's a problem, and CCP don't want to address that. They want to address that, sorry. But what this does in practice is stops anyone in a lower class wormhole, C4, C3, C2, C1, from being able to come and do any drifter spawns. Why is that the case? You cannot move capitals from C4 or below out through those connections. It's not physically possible. Capitals can only move between C5s and 6s and K space. So a capital ship must be present in sites prior to this thing, decloak transmission array, a relay, to trigger this drifter spawn. This drifter by itself is worth 300 million. All of the rats, ISK, 300 million ISK, all of the rats in C5s are worth about 230 million. And then this drifter on their own is 300 million. So we've had 300 million ISK ship removed from our ability to rat this unless you live and own a C5. So initially when I read this, I was like, okay, CCP are trying to turn off the wormhole ISK faucet. They've decided it's too easy. Let's turn that off. When in reality, that's not what's happened. All they've done is increase the value of these high-class farm holes by saying the only way you can farm these properly is to have a structure in that system, essentially, have capital ships, and farm them. And these already exist. There's most of C6 is farm holes anyway, and that's just big alliances and corporations that all they do is log in, close their hole, undock their capitals completely safely, crab and get a couple of billion ISK per hour and log off again. And then log on a different tune and go do something else somewhere else. That's all that happens in those systems, in C6s. And it's possible with this change that that's going to end up what happens with C5s as well. There's going to be very little point in opening up a C5 and jumping in there with Marauders and things now. Because you can earn just as much cash in a C4 as you would in a C5. Whereas before, C5s were great for content because there was always different people like Marauders and fleets of other stuff all coming through, running all the content. You might come across a capital, you might not, and there was always stuff going on. So that's my big gripe here, is what this change has done is removed content. Anyone that lives in a lower class wormhole now cannot ever see an Arithmus Tyrannos unless they join a C5 wormhole alliance, which I don't think is great, to be honest. Like, we try and be very new bro friendly in my group. One of the exciting things we can build towards is being able to go and rat C5s. That's still possible, but there's not really any difference to rank a C5 to rank a C4 if there's no drifter spawn. And so there's a mechanic of the game that's been taken away from 70-80% of wormholers, which I don't think it's pretty sucky. And they haven't turned off the ISK faucet. That still exists. All the same ISK will come from will be drained out. It will just go to the big groups instead. So that's what I want to say about those. And the quite funny thing here is, of course, there's a thing here that says any escalation waves. So when you have a capital ship enter a wormhole site, they get capital escalation waves as well as the drifter to make it harder and a bit more annoying for them. Those capital escalation waves are worth very, very little ISK, and they have huge amounts of HP. So they're normally really annoying to get rid of, and they eat into your ISK per hour quite heavily. So what the funny thing is here, if you leave the site or move more than 100 kilometers away, these ships despawn. People immediately twigged with the carrier conduit stuff. I don't know the exact mechanic, but using the new carrier conduit system, they could spawn all the capital escalations except the drifter, conduit 250 kilometers away, have those ships all despawn, and they only spawn once. Once they despawn, they don't come back. So you just literally conduit away, they all despawn, and then you bring in your other capital to actually fight the drifter. So people are being able to cheese this now, not have to fight any of the really like boring capital escalations and just fight the drifter, and they're getting even more ISK. I'm pretty sure this is being addressed and changed in the coming days, but it's quite funny that that's one of the outcomes. And so, yeah, what I kind of want to say about all of this and things with the removal of the yacht as a roller and things, it all points to a gentle trend within JSpace particularly of either just taking stuff away. We're slowly losing. There's been no positive patch in JSpace for, I was looking at I4One's video the other day. Said the last time Wormhole was mentioned in a patch or a news article was 2019, I think it was, and that wasn't even an update for JSpace. It was just something that like impacted JSpace a little bit. So there's not been a positive patch for Wormholes for well over 5 years, and the changes that do happen are just gently taking things away and making it harder and harder to be a small group surviving and thriving in JSpace. Like a couple of years ago when they made the changes to structures, they removed the first timer and greatly shortened the timers and stuff on the reinforcement timers. So if you're a small group that would only have Athenors and Astrahuses anchored, someone could roll in and remove them before you could even log in and respond. Almost, it literally felt like that. I think they could take it down in 18 hours. Your whole structure would be gone, all of them across the system. So you don't have much time to, bat phone, form a response, get going. So we're okay about that. We've dropped a couple of other structures and we've worked, but it's hard for small groups. The access to the ISK in JSpace has just been taken away from small groups that don't live in C5 and C6. These were the big ISK makers. The mining ISK is moving away, which we expected, but that's going away. And generally the excitement around JSpace doesn't exist anymore. Obviously, Equinox has made nullsec super exciting, which is awesome. I'm excited about nullsec, but it makes it really, really hard to recruit at the moment because everyone is interested in nullsec, fine, but because there's been no good changes. HighSec's had home fronts, which were quite a really positive change, I think. Obviously, LowSec has had the pirate insurgencies and the revamp of faction warfare completely, which was awesome. And now we've got the nullsec change. So what I'm really, really hoping is that this is all part of a bit of a bigger plan. All these gentle changes, just kind of moving stuff away from what we can do day to day. I really hope this is part of a much bigger plan, and CCP have got a big update coming. We've done HighSec, we've done LowSec, we're doing nullsec. Next, it's got to be JSpace, because otherwise, it's deflating, it's demoralizing. I'll be honest. Every time there's a change at the moment, we go through the patch notes and we see another small thing to do with JSpace, and it's negative. All my community, my corporation, and my community just like, there's 3 or 4 days where everyone's just really annoyed. there's a lot of ranting, not much positive energy around wormholes at the moment. That being said, we'll see what the true impact of Equinox is. As mentioned, with the power issues that nullsec corporations are going to face for a while they figure out how to get their power routed, we may see people go, what the hell, I can't do anything, I can't make any money in nullsec anymore, let's try something else, and then we get an influx of people to wormholes. Maybe, who knows. But right now, basically we're left with gas huffing and some lower level blue loot unless you own capitals in high class. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say on this, guys. A little bit of a rant, but also just wanted to draw attention to some of the changes to JSpace in case you've missed them. Thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate it if you've made it this far. Yeah, I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.